In our headlines on this Wednesday afternoon, February 15th. US inflation eases slightly in January, advancing 6.4% on year amid higher prices for basic necessities including food and shelter. The death toll soars past 41,000 in Turkey and Syria as authorities seek to grasp the full extent of the damage caused and relief efforts needed. And here in Korea, employment expands last month, but the size of expansion is the smallest in some 22 months amid the global economic slowdown. The extent of the devastation in Turkey and Syria is painful and petrifying, to say the least, that is. In fact, the tragic event is being regarded as the worst natural disaster in the region in 100 years. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
According to Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Tuesday, the devastating earthquakes have now killed over 35,000 people in his country. Syrian officials say over 5,800 people have been killed, meaning the total death toll from the two countries has now surpassed 41,000. President Erdogan compared the damage done by back-to-back earthquakes on February 6th to hundreds of powerful atomic bombs. He also said that while progress had been made in terms of the quality of construction in the country, tighter building regulations are needed.
The fact that 98% of the buildings that collapsed in the latest disaster are ones that are built before 1999 shows the progress we made in the standardization of buildings and inspections, but it also reminds us that we need to be stricter.
Meanwhile, according to the UN Children's Agency UNICEF on Tuesday, more than 7 million children have been affected by the massive earthquakes. The UN agency's spokesperson said that 4.6 million children across 10 provinces in Turkey have been impacted, while another 2.5 million children were affected in Syria. The spokesperson added that thousands of children have been killed, with others having lost their parents during the deadly earthquakes. Despite the rising death toll and other grim figures, reports of miraculous rescues continue to surface. 2 people were rescued alive in Turkey after being trapped under rubble for more than 200 hours. However, despite the ongoing search and rescue operations, authorities say the focus is now quickly being shifted to helping people struggling without food and shelter amid bitterly cold temperatures. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Neighboring Japan is also prone to earthquakes, and that being said, experts there have weighed in on the natural disaster that recently unfolded in Turkey and Syria. Our Kim Jung-shil covers their thoughts.
For experts in Japan, the devastation in Turkey and Syria is personal. Having gone through the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, and as a country that long suffers from earthquakes, this is a matter that they can relate to.
In the case of the March 11 earthquake, a reverse fault earthquake it was, which doesn't affect the ground as much. But it happens in the seabed, which caused a tsunami that killed many people. But in Turkey, the quakes moved the land sideways near the cities, causing massive damage.
Another renowned expert from Japan said it's extremely difficult to predict these types of quakes in advance.
An earthquake of this magnitude comes once in 5 centuries or a millennium. If we're sure that one's definitely coming once every certain number of years, we are able to forecast the next one based on the data. But earthquakes don't work like that. They don't come in a set period, which is why it's difficult to predict them.
Professor Iyo has dedicated his life trying to predict earthquakes, having experienced the Kobe earthquake in 1995 that took thousands of lives. We asked him what he feels when he heard about the devastation in Turkey and Syria.
It's not so much that I feel helpless, but I do think that what we're doing isn't helping the world as much as we'd hope. In Japan, huge earthquakes hit and people's lives have been taken. It's happened so often that I became numb, which is not good. But all I can do is focus every day on trying to understand earthquakes better and hope that my research can somehow help people in the future.
Not as often and devastating as Japan, Turkey, or Syria, South Korea also has earthquakes, although on a milder scale. One official said it's important to prepare for earthquakes, even though South Korea is relatively safe.
We think it's important to send an alert even if it's just 1 or 2 seconds earlier when an earthquake hits and a huge impact can be predicted. In those seconds, people can protect themselves or stop what they're doing if it's dangerous. We think this could save lives.
All the experts from both South Korea and Japan said it's important to learn from the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria and better prepare for the future. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Over in the U.S., annual inflation slowed slightly in January, but the pace of moderation, pundits say, appears to be leveling off. Our Jonguns has the latest.
U.S. consumer prices in the first month of 2023 increased by 6.4% compared to the same period last year. It marks the 7th consecutive month their year-on-year slowdown has been reported and is well below a recent peak of 9.1% in June. But the latest data from the Labor Department shows that prices are not going down as quickly as expected. Inflation in January is only a 0.1 percentage point down from the 6.5% recorded in December. Watchers from Dow Jones and Wall Street have been looking for 6.2%. Adding to the disappointment is monthly inflation. Prices in January increased 0.5% from December, the most in 3 months, and far higher than December's 0.1% figure. Annual core inflation, which strips out volatile food and energy prices, jumped 5.6% on year and 0.4% on month. Rising housing rental costs accounted for over half of the monthly increase at 0.7% compared to December. Energy was also a significant contributor, with the seemingly stabilizing prices once again rising 2% on month. Following the hotter-than-expected inflation news, U.S. stocks fluctuated, adding pressure amid the prospect of further rate hikes, which are now at their highest levels since September 2007.
And I don't think that the numbers indicated that inflation is completely behind us, meaning they were a little bit maybe elevated relative to what some of the expectations were. So my outlook is sort of one of stagflation, and I think that is going to make it tough for the Fed and for investors.
President Biden, in the meantime, hailed the 7 months of declining yearly inflation, but said there's more work to do in the fight against high prices. Yoon, Arirang News.
Back here on the local front, export and import prices eased for the 3rd month in a row on the back of a stronger won. Data from the Bank of Korea on this Wednesday shows that the export price index stood at 114.28 last month, down 3% from December. Likewise, the import price index edged down 2.3% to 134.95 amid lower prices for petroleum, coal and chemical products, given the stronger Korean currency. The exchange rate averaged around 1,247 won to the dollar in January. Meanwhile, President Yoon Suk-yeol has spoken of holding steady train fares, road tolls and postal fees as part of broader efforts against inflation. Presiding over an emergency economic meeting earlier on this Wednesday, he also pledged efforts to better address soaring energy prices to ease the burden on the ordinary working population. Separately, the president called on the telecommunications and finance sectors to stabilize prices, underscoring their special market status through government-issued licenses. The local job market expanded last month, but its expansion was the smallest in almost 2 years. Our Trade Ministry correspondent Shin Ha-young has numbers.
The number of people employed in South Korea has risen for the 23rd month in a row, but the employment rate growth in January was at its slowest in 22 months. Data released by Statistics Korea on Wednesday shows that more than 27.3 million people were in employment as of last month, with an on-year increase of 411,000. This marks growth for the 23rd consecutive month, but it has slowed after hitting a peak in last May. In fact, this was the smallest rise since March 2021, when the country saw an on-year increase of 314,000 in the employment. The base effect was one of the main driving factors as the country added more than 1 million jobs in January last year. The nation's shrinking population also contributed to the drop in employment. Job growth was driven by people aged 60 and over, who accounted for about 97% of the total on-year gain. The government has been trying to provide more job opportunities to seniors, particularly in the healthcare sector. However, employment figures for those in their 20s and below and for those in their 40s declined compared to the previous year. By industry, the healthcare sector added the most jobs, followed by restaurants and accommodation. On the other hand, manufacturing saw an on-year decrease for the first time in 15 months, reflecting the economic slowdown under the weakened exports. Meanwhile, South Korea's unemployment rate dropped to its lowest for any January since 2014 to 3.6%. Statistics Korea said that the base effect will also have an impact on next month's figures.
The positive part is that there will be a recovery in daily life due to the recent easing of the indoor mask mandate. However, there is a base effect from last year and a negative impact from the economic slowdown due to lingering economic uncertainties. And these factors will affect the employment in February.
She added that weaker performance in the manufacturing sector will slow down job growth in February amid a global economic slowdown. 신하영, Arirang News.
North Korea may have established a separate unit within its military for its solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missile operations. State media footage of the regime's most recent military parade showed several flags bearing an emblem of a missile flying beyond the Earth's atmosphere. One flag was spotted next to Kim Jong-un's wife as she entered the parade grounds, and another was attached to a launcher vehicle that is believed to have carried a new type of solid-fuel ICBM. Pundits believe these flags denote the presence of a new unit, as they are different from the Missile Bureau flag seen in pictures earlier this month. Meanwhile, the presence of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's daughter at public events has been prompting quite a bit of speculation regarding the regime's intentions. Our foreign affairs correspondent Choi Min-jung has more.
The North Korean leader's daughter, Kim Ju-ae, has become the focus of attention around the world in recent days. Kim, who's believed to be around 9 years old, has recently made more public appearances with her father, Kim Jong-un. Last week, she was spotted at the 75th founding anniversary of the regime's army, walking the red carpet alongside her father and talking playfully with the leader. This comes in sharp contrast with where Kim's sister Kim Yo-jong was reportedly standing, as the Unification Ministry said that while she attended the parade, she appeared to be standing in a corner behind rows of soldiers, far from Kim Jong-un's family. Kim Ju-ae was first introduced to the media last November. Back then, state media described her as an adorable and noble daughter. However, now, the child is being referred to as the respected one. North Korea has recently been striving to idolize its leader's daughter as well. And on Tuesday, the regime unveiled new stamp designs featuring Kim Ju-ae for the first time. The new designs feature images of her attending the test firing of a Hwasong-17 ICBM last November. Out of a total 8 stamps, 5 include images of Kim Ju-ae with her father. The regime is also reportedly forcing people who have the same name as the leader's daughter to change their name. Citing multiple unnamed sources, Radio Free Asia last week reported that authorities in Pyongyang summoned women with the name Kim Ju-ae and ordered them to change their names. North Korea is known to have prohibited its people from using the same names as its leaders. The recent spotlight on the leader's daughter has also raised questions over the possibility of her becoming Kim Jong-un's successor. But experts say it is too early to tell.
So I think what Kim Jong-un really wants to send the message through, portraying her, his daughter, is that they are not really the bad guys, and also what they are doing is for the future generation to come, and because of that, they will never give up nuclear weapons, or they can never give up, developing missile programs.
Likewise, a researcher at the Institute for National Security Strategy said Kim Ju-ae symbolizes North Korea's future generations, and that her appearances at military events imply that North Korea's military power is centered on protecting the lives and safety of future generations. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Also, on the international front, the US and its European allies have renewed their support of Ukraine's efforts to protect its land from Russian invasion. Our Lee Si-hoo has details.
Nearly a year into the war in Ukraine, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin on Tuesday said that he expects Ukraine to conduct an offensive against Russia in the spring. Speaking with reporters after a meeting with defense ministers of Ukraine's allies in Brussels, Austin said that members of the alliance will do all they can to ensure that Ukrainian forces obtain as much ammunition as quickly as possible. He also said that while the alliance does not foresee a massive aerial attack by Russia, they know that Moscow has a substantial number of aircraft in its inventory.
That's why we've emphasized that we need to do everything that we can to get Ukraine as much air defense capability as we possibly can.
Meanwhile, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg also reaffirmed the need for assistance for Ukraine. Saying that Russian President Vladimir Putin is preparing for more war, he said that the Allies' support for Ukraine will continue.
And it will continue because we need to ensure that Ukraine gets the weapons it needs to be able to retake territory, liberate the lands, and win this war and prevail as a sovereign independent nation.
Meanwhile, the U.S. is considering sending Ukraine thousands of weapons and more than 1 million rounds of ammunition seized off the coast of Yemen in recent months from smugglers suspected of working for Iran. That's according to a Wall Street Journal report on Tuesday quoting unnamed U.S. and European officials. The journal reported that the move would open up a new supply of firepower that Ukraine's allies could tap into as they struggle to keep up with Ukraine's requests for military support. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
Starting Saturday, that would be February 18th, China will lift its short-term visa restrictions on South Korean travelers. Intentions to this end were shared by the Chinese embassy here in Seoul on this Wednesday. It also follows South Korea's decision to resume its short-term visas for Chinese travelers starting last Saturday. The government here had suspended short-term visas for Chinese travelers last month amid an alarming rebound in COVID-19 infections in China following its sudden shift away from zero COVID. Now, Beijing had retaliated by taking the same measure against Seoul. Up next, we shed light on a master craftsman of a Korean handicraft that has a centuries-old history. Our Shin Se-byuk sat down with him.
Brilliant, shimmering hues glimmer in the light. This is the beauty of Najeon, a Korean traditional craft that brings together mother-of-pearl inlays and lacquerware. The technique has been handed down for centuries in South Korea. Choi Sang-hoon, one of the 3 Najeon master artisans recently named by the Cultural Heritage Administration, has dedicated more than half a century to creating traditional Najeon crafts. Creating these complex crafts demands perseverance. It begins with the base, filling the gaps with freshly made clay glue. Once dried, the artisan draws the outline. And a natural glue made of fish gelatin is carefully applied to make sure the mother-of-pearls are well attached to the surface. And here begins the real magic. Cutting mother-of-pearl into shapes and threads. A delicate touch and precise cutting are needed to ensure the highest quality.
0.029까지 나와요.
Creating each piece can take several weeks or even months. But finding authentic Najeon craft work has become rare with mass production.
Moving away from traditional methods isn't necessarily wrong. You swim with the tide. Crafts change as things become modernized, and there are people like me who keep traditions alive.
Still, he says he feels obliged to pass down the skills to the next generation as a designated master artisan. He has 4 students who want to continue his legacy.
It's a call of duty, a duty given to me by the country to keep the tradition alive. Not many want to learn this traditional craft because you can't use it to build big wealth. But I'm lucky. I have my students here. I will pass down all I have to them. That's hope.
As a craftsman preserving the spirit of Najeon artisanship, Choi says the magic of it lies in creating art from scratch.
Painters draw pictures with paint, and I'm a painter who draws with mother of pearl. We breathe life into discarded seashells and lacquer trees. All Najeon ingredients are from nature. That's how we create things from scratch. Najeon itself is nature.
신새벽, Arirang News.
On the entertainment front, BTS member Suga will be the first among members of his group to hold a solo world tour. Now, according to Big Hit Music on Wednesday, Suga will start his world tour in April. He's poised to perform at 5 locations in the US before flying to Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore, South Korea and Japan. Suga's show comes 6 months after BTS held its concert Yet to Come in Busan. And Korean reality program Physical 100 has hit #1 on Netflix's non-English TV show chart. Netflix released its weekly top 10 on Wednesday, which showed that viewers in 78 countries spent a total of 41.6 million hours watching this reality show between February 6th, that is, and the 12th. The survival show has been hovering in the top 10 for 3 weeks since its release. It follows 100 contestants competing for a cash reward of some $235,000 US.
Good afternoon. Those on the East Coast are having harsh winter weather. Strong easterly winds have been bringing heavy snowfall to eastern parts of the country with a heavy snow advisory issued. But most of the snow should let up by late this afternoon, so please stay safe out there. Meanwhile, Jeju Island will see a mix of rain and snow into tomorrow afternoon. Highs will go up to a similar range to yesterday in central parts of the country. Seoul, seeing a high of 7 degrees, a couple of degrees higher than seasonal norms. But chilly winds are making it feel colder than actual temperatures, so please stay dressed in layers. However, southern provinces are having highs going 4 to 5 degrees lower than Tuesday, hovering just above 5 degrees Celsius this afternoon under cloudier skies in most parts of the country. And it will gradually get warmer as we head into the weekend, while southern parts of the country will receive another band of rainfall this weekend, then colder air returns next week. With that in mind, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
And those are the headlines at this hour, but we have our panel session coming up right after this break, during which we address movies and more. So do stay with us.